Hello and welcome to the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast. The intention of this podcast is to open your mind, get curious about yourself and connect to the power you hold within. I am your host, Karen Maloney, an inside-out coach, helping you to believe in yourself and manifest your desires. Check out the podcast, available on all platforms, and go to my website, www.karenmaloney.com for all info. Hello everybody, welcome. It's me, Karen Maloney, and thanks for tuning in for another episode. Again, I have another incredible and empowering conversation for you today. My guest joining me today is Tammy Darcy, who is the founder and CEO of the Shona project. The year that Tammy turned 14, everything changed. Her parents went through a messy separation and her older sister, Shona, was diagnosed with an acquired brain injury that rendered her physically and mentally disabled and left her requiring full-time nursing care. It was also the year she was bullied so badly in school that she spent break times in a toilet cubicle and climbing over the back wall to go home. As a result of all these experiences, Tammy went from an A student to a fail student. Her self-esteem and her self-confidence were destroyed and she gave up on herself for many years. Tammy feels that if she had the right support, information and guidance, she may have been better able to overcome the challenges she encountered as a teen. She now sees that her experience is not unusual and that many girls find their teenage years to be negative, distressing and traumatic. It is during these years that the internal barriers which prevent young women from achieving their potential are often formed. Tammy is passionate about eradicating bullying and rivalry amongst girls and promoting the fact that our differences are what make us special and our challenges are what teach us understanding, resilience and determination. So I really enjoyed this inspiring conversation with Tammy, where she shared some of the events and challenges that she went through, how they impacted her and what she really would have needed at the time. And something that she shared that really stood out to me was when she said that when people or adults don't acknowledge that things can be difficult or hard at times, often as a young person, we tend to then think that something is wrong with us if we're struggling. That was just one of many powerful messages and nuggets she shared, but she also shares about the Shona project, the inspiration behind it, the impact they're making, and the bigger vision that they have for young women all around Ireland and knock-ons, I'm sure, all around the world. So it really is a wonderful conversation. And even if you are a parent to teenagers, even just allowing yourself to explore how to engage with them or how to connect with them and listen to them so they may not feel so alone or isolated. So really powerful work that she and her team and the Shona project are doing, and I'm sure you will find it inspiring. And you can find out more about their work as well on their website, www.shona.ie. That's shona.ie. But as always, I will have links as well from the show notes on my website, karenmaloney.com, and click the podcast section. And as always, feel free to reach out, pop me an email, karen@karenmaloney.com. If you have any questions or would like some support, I would be happy to connect. Enjoy. Hello everybody, welcome and thanks for tuning in as always. And today I have Tammy Darcy joining me, the founder and CEO of the Shona project. So first of all, you're very welcome, Tammy, and thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me, Karen. It's nice to chat to you.
Yeah, looking forward to chatting and learning more about the Shona project and all your work. But maybe if you can just share a little bit on some of your experiences or your background that led you to creating the project as well.
Yeah, I mean, the story of Shona, I never even really know where to start because it goes back so far, you know, like there's kind of chapters to the story.
Yeah.
Really, it's called after my sister Shona, and we're very close in age. There's just 11 months between us, and she's my big sister. And when we were in second year and third year, so age 14 and 15, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and that just spiraled a series of events that, put our family through a huge amount and resulted in Shona being going through a very serious surgery and ending up with quite significant brain damage, which has affected her mentally and physically and left her pretty much removed from the world ever since and living in full-time nursing care. So that was her experience as a teenager. But then, I also experienced that as a very significant trauma because my sister that I knew and that I loved and that I shared my life and my bedroom and most of my clothes with was no longer there in the same way. And not having kind of permission or space to grieve that loss kind of left me in this suspended grief for many, many years before I even recognized what it was. So the Shona Project is really, I suppose, a testament to her, but also to myself at that age, and the relationship that we had and how important our sisters are and sisterhood and girls supporting girls. And that was really the inspiration behind the Shona Project.
Wow. I can't even imagine what that must have been like. But just, I think it's an important topic to touch on as well, how trauma can actually just affect the whole family and siblings as well, kind of unconsciously maybe at the time. So what were some of the knock-on effects that you experienced as well during that whole period?
God, so much. I mean, the teenage years are tricky enough as it is,
Tough anyway, yeah.
right? Because we're trying to figure out who we are. We're trying to figure out what we stand for. We're trying to figure out who are the people that we want to share our lives with and what we want to do and who we want to be and all of these questions. And then you add in all these other significant challenges on top of that. Just things like, the messages we get from society about what is expected from us, pressure to perform academically and being compared, like living in a world where we're compared to each other in terms of academic performance being our primary concern. Access to role models, which some of us don't have at home. And, then friendships and trickiness of navigating friendships, especially in a lot of cases, I think, you can have a best friend since you were 4 because you were interested in similar things like making slime or, Power Rangers or whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden you're teenagers and you're different people and your relationships change and we're not taught or supported in how to manage those relationships, which is why there's such a huge amount of drama in every school that I've ever visited and probably in every school in every country all over the world. So we see all that just being like a day-to-day challenge, but then there's other traumas on top of that, like eating disorders, mental health, anxiety, family separation, disability, lack of diversity. The list is just endless. And I don't think it's recognized enough until you look at, these 6, 7, 8-year-olds girls and these dreams that they have and the confidence they have. And then you see that same girl at 17, 18 and she's just exhausted and she's just surviving. And, the damage is done at that stage. So it's just a really tricky time and it's getting trickier even since I was a child or you were a child, it's even getting trickier in the last 2 years through this pandemic. But it's not unsolvable, it's just a case of communication, preparing them, giving them the tools and showing them that they can get through these things and not to have completely negative viewpoints on or shame around these challenges that they experience.
Yeah, for sure. And, as you were mentioning so many of those things again, it's like all these memories come flooding back. I'm like, oh, yes, I remember the times and the challenges and trying to navigate it all and figure out who you are. And then, for you as well, having experienced what was going on within your family as well, I can imagine that obviously the attention totally shifted and it was all on Shona and her health and her well-being and making sure she was looked after and taken care of and got the attention and care she needs. Absolutely, rightly so. But then what did you need as well throughout all of that and the subsequent years when maybe you couldn't grieve or didn't know how to process?
Well, what I needed was actually very simple. Okay, well, I needed lots of things, but the main thing that I needed that I didn't get that could have been transformational for me was just recognition of what was going on because I lived in a time where let's all just pretend that everything's fine. Let's not show other people that as a family we're falling apart. parents panic, when they see their kids struggling and they say, oh, it's not a big deal or it's not a problem because they're afraid,
Mm-hmm.
of they're like, let's minimize this and minimize this. So that's why it took me 20 years to acknowledge the fact that I had been grieving for so long. So for somebody to acknowledge and to say to me, Tammy, this is a really hard thing you're going through and we're here for you. And, we don't expect you to get A's in your exams at the moment, or we
Mm.
don't expect you to not say that you're struggling at the moment, because we're giving you permission and space to figure this stuff out first. And that would have been transformative for me. I was also, just the same year my parents split up. And that was hugely traumatic on all of us. And again, everybody acting like everything was okay and nobody in school acknowledging it. And I was also being bullied in school, and that was like very, very badly bullied, like really badly bullied. And that wasn't acknowledged or spoken about. And I mean, even when a couple of years later, one of my best friends in school died by suicide on a Sunday night. And I had to go into school on the Monday morning and sit beside an empty chair in school, without it
Yeah.
being acknowledged. I mean, they did acknowledge it in lots of ways, but how traumatic to go in at 16, 17 and sit beside an empty chair without that being addressed or given the support. So what happens when you're a young person and people don't acknowledge that stuff is hard is that you think there's something wrong with you, because you're struggling. And I think just that kind of recognition, open communication lines would have been such an important thing.
Yeah. And what you mentioned there as well, we think something is wrong with us. And I think that's ultimately a story so many of us take on in one way, shape, or another. And, what do you think it comes down to as well? The fact that we're so afraid to acknowledge or to feel or to speak about things. And I know it's very Irish to, and definitely back in the day, to just shove it under the carpet and kind of keep going. But what do you think that is? What do you think the reason is it for, or what has been lacking down through the generations that we don't have this capacity?
Um, I'm not really sure what it is, to be honest. I think that, I'm a parent of teenagers now, and when I see them struggling, I used to panic
Mm.
and I used to try and say, it's fine, it's fine, it's going to be fine, just to try and make it go away, or to try and make them not panic or feel better about it. And, we're not fooling anyone with that
Yeah.
approach. It's not fine. And trying to talk ourselves into thinking it's fine doesn't make it fine either.
Hmm.
Um, I just think that a lot of the parents that I meet really struggle to talk to young people. I think we can be very patronizing to teenagers in particular. Um, I've learned so much from the young people that I meet, like so much, and even saying things like it was the same for us when we were younger. It wasn't the same at all.
Mm.
It was nowhere near the same. They live in a whole completely different world
Hmm.
to what we even did 15, 20 years ago. So I think we need to listen a lot more, and not to try and fix it. I had this big conversation with my own daughter, who's nearly 17, a year or two ago, when she was struggling, and I just wanted to fix it all the time. And she said, "Mom, you can't always fix it. Like, I just need you to listen to me sometimes." And that was transformative for me as to how I approach things with her now. And I just sit and listen without panicking and trying to take the obstacle out of her way, because that's just not helpful.
Yeah. So true as well. And I know I can look back even on my own journey as well. And I know for me anyway, I just knew absolutely nothing about emotions and actually how to feel. I just thought if I felt anything that was considered like a negative emotion, I thought it was like a bad thing. Like somehow I was failing at being a good human and better to just kind of shut it down or avoid and not go there, because then you might get stuck or whatever these crazy stories I told to myself. So I know definitely learning emotional skills for me and learning just how to process and actually have a conversation with our emotions and realize, oh, they're actually giving us feedback and they're not this big, bad, scary thing that I always somehow thought they were. And that's why I even talk about it so much as well. I think that's what's lacking more so than anything nowadays. It's those kind of life skills and tools and being able to emotionally self-regulate ourselves. And that doesn't mean we have to do it all the time, of course not. But having those skills, because we're with ourselves 24/7, to be able to move through something in a moment, I think is really powerful as well, and certainly has been absolutely lacking from a lot of education as it's currently been. But then
Mm.
what was your turning point then as well, when it all, I don't know, when you finally started to open up or to grieve or to look at things differently or to heal? What was the turning point for you?
It took a long time. Like, I was definitely, because I'd been let down by so many people.
Mm.
I had been shown by the world that people leave, and that the people that love you always are not always there when you need them.
Mm.
Like, look, there's various reasons for that. Obviously, my parents were dealing with a lot with Shona and their own separation and stuff like that. But um, I think as an 18, 19-year old, I was just, I don't need anybody, and
Mm.
the world made me angry, and I'm going to be very determined and get wherever I'm going to go by myself with no help from
Yeah.
anybody. And had a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I became a single parent at 18. I just kind of felt like the world was judging me already, and I just had this huge desire to prove everybody wrong, which is why, which served me actually very well,
Yeah.
because I did, have done well in my life. But so I had this kind of attitude of having a very, very small group of friends, a very, very small circle around me for a long, long time. Like, my best friend would even say that it took her years to get a hug from me. I was just like one
Mm.
of those people that's like, I don't do hugs, and no, I don't need help, and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But in 2011, my father passed away, and I think that actually broke me.
Mm.
Um, and brought a lot of stuff up for me that I hadn't dealt with. And I just put myself back together as a completely different person, and just became a lot more open to the importance of having other people around us and of building positive communities. And that's what I try and do in the schools, is to recognize that, every single person in this school has so much to deal with, and how amazing it would be if they could come to school and know that every other girl in her class or in her year group is there for her, and that she can share what's going on, and that they will support her and they will look after her. And I think
Mm.
and in particular, women supporting women and girls supporting girls are so transformative. And again, would have made a huge difference to me. So I think, my dad's passing, and I only kind of saw it in retrospect,
Yeah.
just made me have to do a lot of work and face up to that grief and deal with that grief. And it's then when I went through it that I kind of thought, you know, there's so many girls living with this level of grief or stress
Mm.
or sadness, and I don't really want them to have to go through all these years of being alone before they manage to find their tribe, or find the people that will support them, or find those tools, as you said.
Mm.
Um, but I think a huge part of that as well is that we tend to have a lot of shame around, what we perceive to be our failings, or what we perceive to be mistakes that we've made, or
Mhm.
times where we haven't been perfect, of which there are many for all
Yeah.
of us, right?
Yeah.
We're ashamed because we're not a size 8. We're ashamed because
Mhm.
we're not the most popular girl in the school. We're ashamed because that one boy didn't like me. We're ashamed because we only got B's instead of A's. Like, it's just so much shame, and it's crippling. And I think that that's one thing that holds all of us back. And what I've realized now is that all of the things that make me good at this job, all the things that have given me strength, all came from those times that I was ashamed of before.
Mm.
And I literally rewrote the script in my mind, and have so much pride over all of those things that I've overcome now. And I'm encouraging other people to do the same.
Yeah. Epic. What an important message as well, because it is that power that we hold as well. We do get to rewrite things, but we have to be willing to go into the depth of them sometimes, and to allow ourselves to feel and acknowledge and just accept what we went through. And again, without judgment, without having to criticize ourselves or feeling more shameful. And I know for me, it was mind blowing to me actually how much shame I carried within me. I was totally oblivious to it. I felt certain different things for sure, but I didn't realize that the root of all of it was this sense of shame. And for me, shame encompasses so much of just those general not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy enough, like a fear of expressing and all these kind of different things, that it was just like, oh my God. And, like you say as well, it's sharing to help others, because we often wait and we put up and we put up and we put up and we suffer in silence and we think we're all alone. And then something major might happen in order for us to finally, crack open or to do the work. And the message is as well, we don't have to wait until that time. We can start doing it at any moment, rewriting our story, feeling all the rejected parts of ourselves and allowing ourselves to come back to wholeness. And I know you mentioned, like, that's obviously what you did as well, and you said the steps and putting yourself back together. How did that look for you at the start?
I was kind of doing it before I realized I was doing it. Like, certainly, after my father passed away, and I just became very self-reflective. I always have been anyway. I fell back in love with education, realized how much I had actually loved learning, went back into full-time education and just developed this like real growth mindset. And I'm still doing it. I'm still figuring it out. I go through periods of therapy where and actually the best therapy that I've had is the therapy where I'm not dealing with an immediate crisis or trying to put out a fire, but just like that kind of therapy where you just go and look at, how I react to certain situations and how, like, what certain triggers for me are. And that's where the real work is done, because you're able to look at the big picture. And I also, have done quite well in my career, and have been recognized for work that I've done, which has built my confidence, feedback that I've gotten from people. And I've just slowly pushed myself more and more every year. But I definitely, the more I reflect on it, the more I realize how many of my like habits or triggers or hang-ups or bad habits came from that particular period, people pleasing, not wanting to, let people down or turn people down who ask me to do stuff, which has resulted in me being burnt out so many times. I'm getting better at it now. Because you live in a house that's chaotic and where there's arguments and all of this kind of thing. And I think any of us, if we look at how we behave, it's a lot of it is formed during those kind of particular years as well. I think this job that I have created for myself has been hugely healing, and I consider myself so lucky to have had this opportunity to have turned a negative situation into something as such a force for good. And I think being able to find a way to turn your negative situations into a force for good is so healing and so empowering, and such an amazing thing to be able to do in so many ways, both on a professional level and a personal level. So yeah, there's been a lot of change, and it's hard to even nail down where certain things started and to even tie all the dots together and kind of web it out. But it's been like definitely, what was it, 2011? It's been an 11-year process whereby I now have such a positive viewpoint of all of those challenges. I can see the learning, I can see the positives, and that's a lovely place to be able to be, rather than to be full of like shame and regret and negativity about those things.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the beauty of healing. And even as they say as well, what happened to us may not have been our fault, or usually is not our fault, and it's not really our responsibility, but our responsibility piece to ourselves, is to our healing, is to coming back to our wholeness, to what we love, to the truth of who we are, because still we were born to be who we were. And like we say, pain is a great catalyst for growth, but we can't get there without us showing up, our willingness to be self-reflective, like you mentioned, and doing the work. And I'm the same. Like, it's consistent, it's ongoing, but it gets better and better. And it's those things as well of, you have these practices and you do these skills or tools or whatever supports you, whether it's a therapist, you do them when things are good, because it's having them, so then you know what to do when crisis hits, or if crisis hits. And there's always challenges in life that you're not kind of caught off the hop. You may be, but then you're like, oh, hang on now. I've been putting things into practice. How can I shift this? How can I look at this differently? How can I actually just feel and allow and accept this at the moment, without adding all the thoughts, without adding the extra pressure on myself or judgment or whatever the case may be. So it's really, yeah, it's consistent, but it's beautiful and it's worth it. And like you say as well, it totally shifts the experiences. And even myself, when I look back on different things in my life, I can see the gift of them as well. I'm like, okay, I would absolutely not be the person I am today without them. And that's not to say, people need to go through challenges, but again, we're having this human experience, and I don't believe anything is in vain if we have that willingness to grow and learn more about ourselves. And then when was your point where you thought, okay, I need to channel some of this, I need to help others, and, started the Shona project?
So I was doing a master's in education, and I was also coaching soccer. I've coached boys and girls soccer for many years, and I was coaching this particular group of girls. And there was one girl in particular, and she used to come down she was an amazing soccer player, so gifted. But she used to have to come off halfway through every match with pain in her legs. And I realized that she didn't have a pain in her legs. Her confidence would cripple her, and she'd have so long on the pitch before the mind would just go, and she'd have to come off. And, she would say she had the pain in her legs. And I'm sure she felt pain in her legs, but that's where obviously she was putting this immense stress that she was putting herself under. And she, I really identified with her and just thought, like, who's there for these girls to go to? Where is their community? And how much healing it could be for her to just say out loud, I just don't have the confidence today, or I'm struggling today. And then we could deal with that and move on. But she didn't even have the language to verbalize what was going on with her. And I could see so many girls coming to training that were going through a huge amount at home, and that 1 hour's training a week was somewhere that they could go to put that stress. And then I was thinking about all the girls that don't have sport or don't have good coaches and don't have that outlet. So I was doing this master's in education, and I was asked to do a micro teaching session. There was all other teachers on the master's with me, and I had to do a micro teaching session for 45 minutes. So I put together what now was the very first Shona workshop, or the bones of it, or the approach that I was hoping to take. And I did that for that particular project. And afterwards, all of the whole class, who, as I said, were teachers, came up and said, you should be looking at it, like, you should go and do something with this. You have something really special here. And that day I phoned my husband when I came out, because I was so excited about the feedback, and I was so, I was buzzing. And at the time, I was in this full-time, permanent, pensionable job where I was getting paid whether I turned up or not, where I just had to tick boxes and nobody really cared, and there was no opportunity for advancement or creativity or innovation, but it was just a job, and I would have had a pension and sick pay and whatever else that I needed. So I was very comfortable. And I called my husband as I came out of that class, and I asked him to meet me for dinner, and he came into town to meet me. We had small kids at the time, so we didn't do it very often. And I told him about the workshop, and he's a very risk averse man himself. I was kind of waiting for him to tell me, look, it's a great Tammy that it worked, but you can't walk away from your job. And he didn't. He said, you need to pursue this. You absolutely need to pursue this. And that was kind of the little push that I needed. So for the first year of the Shona project, I would just do like a workshop a month. I would go out to a school. I'd do it for free. I'd refine it. I'd evaluate it. I'd start planning about, I always had this idea in my head of not just creating a job for myself to go into school and do workshops, but to actually start a national movement, and what that might look like, and what are the steps I'd need to take, and what are the skills that I have, and where would I need to bring in other people. And between 2016 and late 2018, that just progressed and progressed and progressed. And then I left my job, and I've been doing it full time ever since. And it's just grown year on year on year. And I do have to say that at no stage do I know what I'm doing, or am I completely confident in what I'm doing. I just feel that people just get behind it, people believe in it, and people want to support it. And I'm just kind of riding the wave, I suppose, and watching it take shape. And now, we're at a stage where we've met nearly 20,000 girls all over Ireland, and we've had 40,000 attend our online events, and we've developed so many different types of interventions, and have so many partners and people behind us. And, I lost in many ways this one sister, and now I think I have like,
Mm.
50, 60, 100 sisters who are on this journey with me, who are
Yeah.
100% committed, who are authentic, who support me and the project, and who are also being fulfilled and inspired by their journey through it as well. So, I mean, there's just so many positives that have come out of it.
That is epic. Thanks for sharing that as well. And again, I believe we're all being guided. And when we truly like that, that's the gift that can lie on the other side when we go through our healing in so many different ways. We don't have to create a big, massive movement, but we channel our gifts in whatever way, or even if it's just being there for a friend or supporting or listening in a new way. We learn so much, but to be able to bring a national movement like that is brilliant and clearly a massive need for it. And I love when you shared about that girl and how it was her confidence crippling her and showing up as pain in her legs, because that's the truth. There's always like a psycho-spiritual aspect of it, and that's the power of our mind. And, that circles back again to having that ability to read our emotions, to be in communication with our body, because our body's always speaking to us. But again, I know for me, it was like the strangest thing in the world. I just thought my body was this thing that followed me around because I lived in my head. I thought if I can live in my head, if I can control everything, I'm safe, I'm fine, all is good. Whereas no, that's just burnout and exhaustion. And, our body is our subconscious mind. It keeps score. And that's one of the greatest practices I have learned as well in that body communication, in that awareness, because it's so much bigger than just the pain in our legs. And like that, it comes back to usually our thoughts that we are thinking. Our thoughts always create form on some level. But again, we're not taught any of this. So I just think that's so epic. So thanks for sharing all of that. And then what have been, you mentioned interventions as well, or what have been some of the things that you have found, or practices or skills or tools to share that have been most important for the young girls kind of at that stage in their life? What is something that they most need at this time?
Well, I think the first thing is to really be careful about how you approach it. This is such a nuanced thing, and it's something that I think we've nailed and are very protective of, because you can have all this information, you can have all of the mindset tricks and tools and all of that. But if you don't go to where a teenage girl is and speak to her in her own language, you're absolutely wasting your time. No matter how useful the information is or how like transformative it could potentially be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the reality of it. We're recruiting at the moment somebody to come in and do workshops with us, but we have to make sure that they're not too parenty or teachery or
Mm-hmm.
academic or mental healthy, and there's loads of ways to do that, even coming down to like what we wear. I wear trainers and a crew
Mm-hmm.
neck when I go into a school, because if I was to wear a suit, again, that's another barrier or a level of inaccessibility or unrelatability
Mm-hmm.
that you're bringing to the room. So I think the first thing is to create that relationship with those girls and to show them that, this is a space for us to be really honest and authentic and to celebrate that level of honesty and authenticity right here. And once you open that up, that's when the magic happens. So all of the tools and tricks are step 2 and not step
Mm-hmm.
1.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do when we're in schools is, I mean, there's issues in every single school, issues of bullying or friendships that fell apart and dramatic history and all of this kind of thing. And I think when you, rather than pinpoint one person and ask them to be the cause, I think one of the things that you can do is to say, look, we all have a part to play here. We all create the culture within the school. And actually, when you do that, they're so on board because they want things to change in their school. They don't want there to be drama and issues and that sort of thing. And how you do that is by saying, I get everybody to stand up and then I say, sit down if you've ever been negatively affected by something another girl has said or done. And 100% of the time, everybody sits down. And then we do it again and we say, look, let's be really honest. And this comes after me sharing my own story as well. And I say, let's sit down if you've ever said or done anything that might have negatively affected how another girl feels about herself. And again,
Mm-hmm.
every single person sits down. So it's just that acknowledgement that we're
Yeah.
all the problem, we're all the solution, we're all in this together. And then what we do is we hand out these worksheets where girls write down something they've done in the past that they want to get off their chests, a promise to do something differently, or, you know, what change they want within their classroom. And then we read them out together, and it's absolutely transformative. And
Wow.
that's where the movement piece comes in.
Yeah, that's so inspiring and so incredible and really empowering. And I know I certainly would have loved something like that appearing in my school back in the day as well. And what would be your ultimate vision as well for the Shona project and for the movement nationally, globally, in the bigger picture?
The bigger picture is that the Shona project becomes almost like a big sister to every girl in Ireland.
Mm.
That from when she starts school, she gets the Shona handbook, and then we create that ongoing relationship with her, and that we're a support system for her. So we're trying to build at the moment a big sister app where girls can just come and chat to somebody about how they're feeling or things. The same as you would to your big sister. You know, it's not
Mhm.
counseling, it's just like a listening ear, somebody who loves you for who you are and supports you no matter what, and just sees that you're just doing your best and reassures you. And that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to build, so that we have this whole teenage year relationship with them. Um, and again, that's a movement. And then the bigger picture is that these girls that we work with during first year, second year, third year become women who value themselves, who make
Mm.
really good choices about who they get into relationships with, and, you know, how they negotiate for jobs and careers, and going into leadership roles and become politicians and change makers and all of those things, and then stake their claim on the world. And then they have daughters, and those daughters see, you know, grow up with those kind of role models. So it's kind of like an ever
Mhm.
perpetuating, as I keep saying, an ever perpetuating movement that just goes in circles. And I think we need more men involved in the conversation as well, for sure. I just think this is not just a female problem that females need to fix. I think it's an everybody problem. And that's my vision, and that was always my vision, and we're starting to get there. You
Yeah,
know, we really are
amazing.
starting to get there, which is just
Oh,
so heartening to see. As I said, there's an appetite there for it. We're
yeah.
just creating a vehicle.
Yeah. I love that. And, again, the importance of having a vision because we don't have to know the how. Like you say, we can never know the how sometimes. We're just figuring it out, but we will be shown the way if we have that vision and we hold on to it and we're willing to do the work that shows up as well in the interim. And that was something I was going to ask as you were sharing about the Big Sister programs and the higher vision. And I think it's just incredible. But I was like, what about the young boys or what about the boys as well in schools?
We get asked this question so much, and
I can
it's
imagine.
9 times out of 10, it's in a hostile way. You know, it's like, what about the boys? Why aren't you supporting the boys? Like, this is where I feel that I can create change, because this is
Hmm.
very relevant to me and my
Yeah.
experience and my life. But I have two sons, two teenage sons as well, and they certainly need so much help, like in many ways, even more, because they're not being taught how to redefine manhood for
Mm.
themselves, and they're trying to fit into this outdated, like,
Yeah.
crazy,
Tough guy,
unrealistic,
Dubby.
harmful, messed up, traumatic.
Mhm.
You know, it's just wrong on so many levels. And again, the women don't win, the men don't win, nobody wins. So we're definitely, we've done a good bit of work with the girls. There's 250,000 girls in Ireland. It's going to take us a long time to create the change that we want to change, but we're
Mhm.
actively seeking a boy's arm to come in and be a partner with us. So,
Cool.
and you would approach it differently, and
Yeah,
you would,
yeah.
you know, your message would be different and all the rest. So, and the schools are crying out for it. We're asked every day nearly, you know,
Yeah,
okay, you're coming to the school, but is there somebody we can bring in for the men or for the boys? And there's just a huge gap there. So
I know.
we'd be very supportive of it happening, and we would love to partner with that organization. But look, there's people better placed than me to
Exactly.
reach the
That's
boys. Yeah.
that's the thing. You do you and the rest will fall into place. But I also think by you doing what you're doing and helping the girls, that will automatically have some knock-on effects as well. Yes, for sure, they still need support and relearning, all the limiting beliefs and subconscious patterns and traumas that they carry, for sure. But it does also have a knock-on effect because, again, we're all one collective as well on the bigger picture. But I think it's epic, it's inspiring, it's incredible, much needed, and I just wish you continued and continued and continued success. And I was going to ask you before, but you've touched on it a couple of times. Like, looking back, would you change any of it?
I mean, obviously, I wish I had a sister to share my life with. I've not been in my life in the same way anymore, has left such a hole. And it's not just her, it's like potential brother-in-law I might have had, nieces and nephews I might have had, somebody to help me give our little brother a hard time. Even when my brother got married and I was the only sibling at the wedding, there's always a hole there. And it's very hard to say you wouldn't change that. But at the same time, a huge amount of good has come from it, and I'm very, very grateful for that too. I think it's a best case scenario given the
Yeah.
challenges that we've been experiencing as a family.
Yeah, for sure. And again, that's really inspiring because you could live with that hole. And again, where we put our focus, we can look at all the things we're missing out on, but having that capacity to be able to shift and actually look, acknowledge it, feel it for sure, but then also shift and see, well, all these other things that have come. I think that's a really important skill as well to have. So thank you so much for sharing today, Tammy. I'm sure lots of people will take lots of different nuggets from it, but please share as well where people can find out more about the Shona project and all that you're doing.
Yeah, so our website is shona.ie, Shona. There's a wealth of information there. And we're also very active on social media as well. We've got loads going on social media every day. So our handle on Instagram is shona.ie, as in SHONADOTIE. And that's where you'll find us.
Brilliant. And as always, I will have links as well from the show notes at my website directly to your website, your socials, and everything. And just thank you again. And I wish you so much success and best wishes.
Thanks, Karen. Nice chatting to you.